Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Borough Fan TV and the Monday Night Show with me, James Hutchinson. So Borough fans, third week running, and we've had a 3-point haul from 2 games. Hugely contrasting performances. We've had the defeat at Preston to the welcoming victory against Millwall. Joining me to discuss these 2 games tonight and look ahead to this week's fixtures with Luton and Birmingham are Joe Scott and David Campbell. Welcome to the show again, lads.
Hey, James, all right?
I'm Jim.
Good stuff, good stuff. Borough fans, as always, if there's anything you want to get off your chest tonight, this is your platform, so share your views on the Monday Night Show with the lads and myself, okay? You know the drill by now. So, we're going to go back to last Wednesday. I'm afraid we're going to have to talk about it. Joe, did you see that performance coming at Deepdale?
No, definitely not. Considering, first half, I think both teams were quite poor, and then we showed tiredness in the way in the second half, and they just scored the 3 goals straight after we looked fatigued. So I was quite surprised. We haven't lost against Preston in the last 10 or so games we played against them. So it just came as a shock, to be truthful.
Yeah. I mean, David, the fact is, we were playing a side that's only won 1 game at home all season. And I think they scored just 4 goals before they played us last Wednesday night. And we were talking before we came on air, we just never seemed to get in our stride. Do you think it was down to the squad size, personnel, formation, or something else? What did you put that performance down to, David?
You could say maybe tired legs, but obviously they're in the same predicament as us. We just didn't show up. I think we tactically set up wrong. With their wingers were just bombing forward, and when we made our substitutions, they just came a little bit too late. When we made the substitutions, they scored like a minute or so later, and it just killed the game off at that point. Yeah.
I mean, Pete Robbo's got in touch there. Evening, Pete. I hope you are enjoying your Parmo. Good lad. No night's a wrong night for a Parmo. Joe, I mean, going back to the Preston game, we know we're not a free score inside the Borough. And much of our success this season has been built on a really strong defence. So how much of a shock was it that we were seen to be blown away with a substandard display at Preston and some of the flaws that we saw in our defence that night? How concerning was that for you?
Very concerning. You would have thought Paddy McNair and Dale Fry would have been the back heart of the defence. With obviously Dijksteel been missing that game because of his little injury problem, but they were showed signs, that they would play too much games, and they showed the tiredness throughout. And more notably, you've noticed in that squad that we didn't have Nathan Wood as well, because he was currently in self-isolation because his girlfriend had tested positive for COVID. So, I mean, on that day, you could have had him there, but obviously restrictions, you can't do anything about it. But it did show signs, like we were missing Dijksteel that day, and we're missing quite a few players. So you just can't rely on Fry and McNair to get through every game without them getting tired,
Yeah. I mean, Mark Wilson, thanks for getting in touch, Mark. He's made the point that tiredness, the team are young, and we don't have any experienced players behind us. And I think tiredness is going to affect all sides, isn't it, lads, with obviously the games coming thick and fast like they are, because we've got really a shortened season or shortened time to fill the 46-game season in. And it's just probably inevitable that you're going to get some performances like that, isn't it, David?
Yeah, all games come thick and fast, and squad rotation is essential. Picking up just a point that Joe mentioned there with Dijksteel, when we play a flat back 4, it's essential that he plays either right back or centre back, because when we play a back 4 with Spence, we just get overrun.
Yeah. Do you think that's because he's got this inclination to just go forward and he's maybe not as switched on defensively as Dijksteel?
Yeah, he's just positionally, he just gets caught, and that's whether offensively or defensively, he's not disciplined enough to play in a back 4. And then when we played Millwall and Dijksteel went, you didn't really see him and Bowler go past the halfway line.
Yeah.
So the difference of playing a back 4 against Millwall and Preston was because of our wing backs were just more disciplined.
Yeah. I mean, another thing I want to pick up from that game, lads, is there was a lot of debate after the match about a couple of players, and 2 players that provoked a lot of response from Borough fans. Firstly, Joe, club captain Britt Assombalonga. Again, his performance was heavily criticised against Preston. Do you think that criticism's fair?
It depends on what kind of Britt Assombalonga you're going to get. Really, the one that can get a goal or 2 from now and again. Then there's another one who can be quite lazy and not be as much as proactive as he was, because not to mention the fact he had that career-threatening injury, went back at Forest. But I think Borough fans are a bit too quick on the hens to get on the back of Assombalonga these days. But I think it's just like I said, it just depends on what kind of Britt Assombalonga you're going to get. You need. I think Warnock could have given Warnock gave him the captaincy to expect him to be more what do you call it?
Just add a little bit more to his game, and hopefully,
And so far, and it's just sometimes he had 2 lazy performances, and probably that's what Neil Warnock has picked up on these last couple of weeks.
Yeah. James, I mean, I'm not Britt's biggest fan, but ever since we've signed him, like Joe said, I have felt sorry for him. Apart from a few months under Pulis, for me, I think we've always played him as a target man, as a loan, and we're not playing him to his strengths. I mean, it's ironic, isn't it, when we played 2 up front on Saturday and he wasn't given a start. When under Gary Monk, when we played him as a 2 striker, he looked a complete different striker of why we actually signed him in the first place.
I would tend to agree with that. And I think we spoke last week on the show, didn't we, that I think for the formation we've got, it's a thankless task for more centre forwards having to play it on their own, and I don't think that suits Britt's skill set at all. And it's interesting there, we've got comments from Chris O'Callaghan, which we saw earlier on, who said he has a soft spot for Britt, but maybe it's time to take the captaincy off him. And then got John Collins' response here that Assombalonga doesn't seem to care. And I find it difficult to think a player doesn't care and they don't want to do well, but he certainly struggles being the man on his own up top, doesn't he, Joe?
Yeah, I said it from time to time again. He does need the support up front, whether from Akpom or whether from Fletcher when he's fit. He does need the support, and if you give him the striker alongside him to support, you'll probably get more of the best out of Britt. But I think in the moment, if you play a number 10 playing behind him, he does tend to struggle from time to time.
Yeah. And Kev Shorts picked up on this. Thanks for watching again, Kev. And he said he was surprised Britt got picked as captain at the start of the season. Maybe Howson would be the choice now. We'll get on to Johnny Howson in a minute. But he would like to see how he gets on, Britt, that is, with Watmore up top. And again, it seemed to work well on Saturday with Akpom and Watmore working together up front. But we'll look at that further on in the show. The other player that provoked a lot of response, David, after the Preston game, was really for his lack of appearance, was Patrick Roberts, which seems to be a weekly thing. The debate goes on with regards to how much he gets used. What do you make of Neil Warnock's comments after the game at Preston when he mentioned Roberts' contribution and questioned it when he came off the bench? And again on Saturday against Millwall, he only got the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's a strange situation. It's like he's given that kick that he need, like, to try and get more out of him. And then he goes to the national press and says how well he's trained. So the ideal opportunity on Saturday to play him, and he never. Maybe he didn't play against Preston because he hadn't shown enough much in training from them. But it's just strange comments to say. I wanted to see him train harder. He trained harder, and he still never got a look in on Saturday.
Yeah. Do you think his comments also, Joe, then apply that or imply that Roberts hasn't been training hard earlier in the season? It's like that's why I'm not picking him.
It may be that, and it maybe come down to when he first re-signed, he had a bit of a problem with muscle fatigue when he came into the club before he re-signed. So I think Warnock's just been wary of him re-aggravating some kind of injury that he picked up before he actually came back to the Borough.
Yeah. And the other downer, I mean, it was bad enough losing to Preston 3-0 and the performance wasn't great, as we said, but I think probably even of greater disappointment, David, was potentially losing Johnny Howson for a length of time. I mean, how influential a player is he, and how much of a loss is it if we lose him for a month or more?
It's a massive loss. You know, in the centre of midfield, he just bosses it, and he's been outstanding, hasn't he, this season and last season? But it's very ironic because if Johnny Howson hadn't been injured, I don't think you would have seen the change of formation on Saturday going to a 4-4-2.
Yeah,
you know,
fair point you make. And before we leave, I've just got one more question on the Preston game. And to be honest, it relates to a lot of games we've had this season. I'm sure you lads have watched a lot of the games, like on the iFollow app and stuff like that. And when you watch the games, I think since Neil Warnock's taken over, it seems to be a thing that's happened for a while. I get a little bit sort of concerned about how we set plays, how we operate set plays, not just so much corners, but things like throw-ins, how easy we give the ball away. And it's just, do you have a reason for why that might be happening, or how can you explain it away, David?
It's weird one because his setups for throw-ins usually are very directing into the box, but because we haven't got that target man, he seems to be working the line. But even offensively from corners, I think the last goal we scored from a corner, wasn't it? Akpom on his debut against QPR.
Yeah.
Other than that, we just don't seem to threaten from corners whatsoever. Whether it's you can't say it's a delivery because McNair's deliveries have been spot on, but the movement is just so poor.
Yeah. We're going to move off for Preston now, thank God. Get away from that. Joe, obviously we mentioned there Johnny Howson, and it was disclosed earlier in the week that Grant Hall's injury is a long-term one now as well. We've also got two strikers that are fully fit at the moment in Britt and Chuba Akpom. Hopefully Fletcher will be back next month. Where would you prioritise in the transfer window in January? What area do you think Neil Warnock should focus on in strengthening our squad?
Possibly we could do with another striker to give like a ball striker to give more competition for the three we already got. Possibly another winger as well, with Yannick Bolasie heavily been mentioned recently. I can possibly do with another man on the left as well, and I think three players, like two wingers and a striker, I think could definitely do the business, in January.
David, how do you feel? It's like a fine balancing act, isn't it? Because Joe's mentioned there a few areas where we could strengthen, and it's in all likelihood it's going to cost us money, excuse me, to do that. And there's not money around at the club, to be honest. So then, do you take the risk of maybe selling one of your saleable assets and upset the balance of the squad that you've got already to do that, or do you just maybe try and get by what you've got and maybe get a little bit lucky with the loan deals as he has with Watmore?
Yeah, I think he's going to go down that route with the loan deals, isn't he? I mean, you can't say no to any offer if it comes in for the bigger players, but then you're back to square one, aren't you? So I don't think you might see much activity. I agree with Joe. I think getting a wide player is essential, but I think you'll probably see Roberts go back to Man City, which then frees up a bit of wage, hopefully, and that might just bring one, possibly two wingers. And I think we're balanced at that. I'd be quite happy with that.
Yeah. David Jackson's been in touch with us. Thanks, David, for getting involved. He said we need a target man, a Jutkiewicz or Matt Smith type. And I think we've spoke before here that in the formation we use, it is that type of player. And I think there's probably more chance of you getting Matt Smith than Jutkiewicz. But is there anyone that's on your radar that you think, realistically, we could maybe go for as a centre forward in January, Joe?
I mean, there could be a few. Even if we have to bring someone in from the Premier League on loan, there could be a few fringe players like Luton about. It remains to be seen, who we're going to be linked with come January. But it'd be interesting to see. I think definitely maybe a power striker like what's been said could be the answer we need, because I think the likes of a Sombalonga could provide the pace option, and we could provide like an all-rounder in Fletcher. But I think we could do with someone with a bit more height, for example. So we could we have to see what January brings.
Yeah. And Gareth Cole's been in touch with us there, David. He thinks Bolasie will come this time. Third or 33rd time lucky. I don't know what it is, but yeah. Would you be happy to see Bolasie come? Do you rate him?
Yeah, I mean, he's had an up and down career, hasn't he, since he's gone to Everton? But he's worked with, Pulis at Crystal Palace, Warnock at Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
So he knows him. He knows what he can get out of him, and he's got a bit of a point to prove with only 6 months left on his Everton contract. So he's going to want to go out there and show that he's still got it for the last 2 years of his career, 2-3 years. He's pacey and direct, so he's exactly what we've been missing, really.
Yeah, and plus the fact I think he was on loan at Sporting Lisbon last season, so I think he still feels like he could have something more to offer down the Championship level. So, and I think when we were trying to sign him in the last window, I think it was just a case of he did actually want to come to the Borough this time, but I think something to do with Everton obviously disrupted the deal. So if he does come to us, it'll be great because I think he's still got a point to prove. Like David said in England.
Yeah. Well, we'll wait and see. That's all for next month, lads. But again, Saturday, Millwall, not for the first time this season. The Borough, they showed the character after having a bad result and a setback. An excellent response against the Lions with a comprehensive win. We touched on it a little bit earlier about the formation with Watmore supporting that one. Do you think we'll see this approach more often now, David, where we'll go with 2 up front, or do you think that was just a case of the opponents suited that formation that we set up with?
No, I think we will. It was interesting to read his comments saying we need to find a way to score goals. And then with Housen getting injury, I think it sort of forced his hand. And I think the luxury of us doing 4-4-2 with Watmore up front, or, he can, if we go 1 up, he can revert back to a winger, so we can go a bit more defensive if we need to as well.
Yeah.
So I think we will see more 4-4-2 up until the January transfer window, and then he might sort of change it depending on who we can bring in.
Yeah. And I think on that, maybe the fixtures we've got as well the next few weeks might help us. And that's not decrying any of the teams we're coming up against, but I think we've got a favourable set of fixtures coming up between now and the new year. So it might be the time to have a go at these clubs. And Joe, with that in mind, on Saturday, what was really pleasing for me was that we came out flying out the blocks, and that hasn't not happened very often recently. But I thought we were really at it on the front foot from the beginning, and makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was like the complete polar opposite from what we saw at Preston. You got the likes of Johnson that has been playing well, and obviously Watmore's done well. And plus the fact, even though he didn't score, I think Chiba Akpom had a really good game. He was getting right areas, he was making space for the other players to come in, and he did well. And so did Morsey and Saville did well as well in the holding midfield area as well. Yeah. So it was a complete polar opposite from what we saw at Preston, pretty much.
Yeah. And I think, David, it's only fair. I mean, we were chatting on the show last week about certain players coming in for criticism. One of those was Marcus Tavernier. And, I mean, he answered his critics on Saturday, didn't he, with his performance? I mean, fantastic goal. But what did you make of his contribution to the game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he tried proving me and you wrong from last week. Then he said he didn't have any end products. I mean, what a finish it was. He loves being on that right-hand side and cutting in on his left. And it suited him, that the 4-4-2 formation. It gave him a bit more freedom. And at times he was tucking in. He wasn't just stuck outside. I thought it was his best performance offensively that we've seen in a long while.
Yeah. There's a few people there getting in about Dyke Steele makes us tick, and it was great to see him back at the weekend. You mentioned there, Joe, a little bit earlier on about Morsey and Saville, and I think they combined really well at the weekend. They stepped up to the plate with Housen being absent. And I thought Morsey was back to the levels that he was at before he got his injury. He had a really good game on Saturday, didn't he? Yeah,
I think he suited him well when he first came to the club, because I was surprised no other club in the Championship would have gone in for him whilst he was at Wigan. So it was actually a good little gem for us when we actually did by him in the end. And like I said, he had a little injury, and he shrugged that off and prepared me. In my personal opinion, I think Sam Morsey's been the signing of the season so far for us, because he's the midfield general that we needed for quite a while now. So it was good to see him give the performance that he did against Millwall.
Yeah. There's a few people getting in touch here, David, with your comments with regards to the 4-4-2. And obviously, Kev Short's agreed there that suited to that formation. It seems to have gone out of fashion, really, 4-4-2 in this country over recent years. Do you think it may see a re-emergence, or do you think how the current setup is with a back three or back five and one up top with a 10, do you think that's in for a few more years to come?
Yeah, I think that's the way the game has changed over the years, hasn't it? It was always 4-4-2 with a target man and a small striker. They're now Quinn and Phillips, but yeah, the game's changed since then. So you have to be very disciplined in a 4-4-2. I much prefer having a bit of fluidity throughout the team, and with 4-4-2, you struggle to create that at times. You're more or less going man to man. So if someone's playing wing backs, it's struggle to adapt to that formation change.
Yeah, but I think Warnock's of the way of thinking that he can change things during the game, can't he? And he will, depending on how the game's progressing, he will revert to something else, even if he might start with a 4-4-2. I mean, talking about the game and how it panned out, I mean, David Jackson's made a great point there about having shots on goal, stuff like that. And the third goal, Joe, Watmore's second goal of the day, that came from a miss-hit by Saville. But maybe in more recent games, we've been a little bit afraid to have a pot-up goal, and that's what happened on Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, with Taverniers' goal, it just proves that you have to take your chances. And I think in more games prior to that, I think we were just scared to pull the trigger in these sort of areas. And obviously, we decided to take our chance against Millwall, and thankfully it worked. So I won't be surprised going into these next few games coming up within this month or so. We need to take our chances when we get them.
Yeah. And Steve Walker, a regular on the show, has been in touch with us lads. He's saying Watmore gives us something different. His movement is absolutely class. Popping up at the right time. And he's a very lively, very busy player. I mean, the 2 goals, David, on Saturday, I mean, that topped it off for me. I mean, that's 4 goals in 6 games. It's come at a great time for him. And after the match, it was revealed that he's going to get offered a contract extension. What's your views on that, David?
Yeah, I mean, we touched upon it last week, didn't we, in saying he offers something different to us. So I'm delighted he's going to be offered an extension. I mean, playing with him 4-4-2 with Akpom, you can see those two have played together at under 21 level for England. They just seem to suit each other's game, which unfortunately for Brit isn't good news. But I think it brings the best out of Akpom as well. You know, Akpom can revert back to not coming as deep, and he can actually run at defenders, knowing he's got Watmore, who's more of a poacher. Both of his goals were poaching goals.
Yeah. I mean, a good point there, and tying in with that is from Paul Nicholas. Thanks for watching, Paul. And he said, Watmore gambles, something that maybe a Sombelonger and Akpom don't do. And in fairness, I mean, they're strikers, but there are times, Joe, where you see them in games and they seem to be almost standing on the heels a little bit, waiting for something to happen, where Watmore's so busy, he's always on the lookout for something, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely need something like that in the team. I'm surprised that the likes of Akpom and Sombelonger are struggling to go in with the poachers' chances, because it's usually either Watmore and even Saville, for example. So it's definitely, you know, to be done in the training ground, work to be done in the training ground, like the likes of Brit and Tuber. So it's just a matter of if you get those kind of opportunities, you've got to take them. So never mind waiting for the offside flag.
Yeah,
I think with Brit and Akpom, it's because they're so used to playing this lone striker at the moment. They're used to not taking the risks because they're used to having the back to goal 9 times out of 10. So with Watmore, it's something refreshing.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point you make, David. I mean, we'll look at the Luton game now. So obviously, I think maybe people were a little bit wary after the Preston defeat, thinking, oh, maybe we should review our hope for the season. But after beating Millwall, it's back to 4 points off the playoffs again. And as we said earlier, we've got a decent run of fixtures coming ahead, but that counts for nothing. And Luton are first or next up on the agenda. Interesting to see. I mean, they're a point behind us in the table, and they struggled last season. Luton only stayed up on the final weekend. Have you been surprised by the progress they've made under Nathan Jones this year, David?
Yeah, I mean, before he left for Stoke, they were struggling in the Championship, weren't they? And you know, he's got them back. I mean, Luton struggle away from home, and we're good at home. Luton, they're only a point behind us, but predominantly they've won most of their games at home, and they've won them quite comfortably because they just attack. I don't think you'll see them come out the blocks and attack us tomorrow. I think they'll try put men behind the ball and look to counter-attack us. So I think what Joe mentioned earlier, it's how we set up from the start. Do we go out and attack them? And if we get that early goal, you know, I think it'll be a completely different game.
Yeah, I mean, picking up on your point there, David, Joe, this season, Luton have scored 4 goals in 9 away games. So they're not free scoring, but then again, we said the same about Preston before last week's game. But being at the Riverside, we're on form at home. We seem to be doing really well this season at home. They've got a few danger men in the team. Who's to look out for on Wednesday night?
Well, as I said in my preview that I put up earlier on, one player particularly to watch out for is James Collins, because he scored a hat-trick in their last game against Preston, and he's been scoring goals for fun recently in Luton's run-up. So James Collins is definitely going to be one to watch out for coming up on Wednesday. And other players I probably might have to watch out for is probably Pelly Ruddock and Panzu as well in the midfield. Yeah. And I've got a good defensive line with Tom Lockyer and Sonny Bradley, who scored that wonder strike at Kenilworth Road when we went there last season. Yeah. So they surprised me, Luton, this season, because I think everyone was tipping them to go down, but they've actually done well, because I think Nathan Jones came in at the right time before they were struggling, because he led them to back-to-back promotions from League 2 all the way to the Championship. And then Stoke, for him, it didn't work out, but he came back and he's got them rejuvenated again. So I think Luton are going to be a sleeper when it comes to the playoffs places, I think, for this season, I think.
Interesting, Joe. I mean, Joe Darghew's been in touch with us. He said we need to push forward and get a few early goals. And I think we agree that we need to be flying out the blocks again on Wednesday night against Luton. Gareth Cole's come up with what more's the new Bernie, and in a few years' time he'll be selling books to get signed outside. I don't know if Duncan will be doing that just yet, but hopefully he can score as many goals as Bernie. He won't be going far wrong if he can do that. Predictions then for Wednesday night, the home game with Luton. I'll start with you first, David. What do you reckon against the Hatters?
2-0. I think we'll come out the blocks pretty quick, get an early goal, and then they'll press forward. And I'd like to think second half we can punish them on the counter attack.
And for you, Joe?
I think we'll win, but I think they're going to score as well. But I'm going to go for a 2-1 Borough win.
2-1 Borough win. Chris Andrews there, he's agreeing with you there, Joe. He's gone 2-1. Mark Wilson's gone 3-1 Borough. So there's a lot of confidence about Wednesday night's game. And it'd be great to get 3 points on the board, because we're on our travels again at the weekend. And it's the big reunion with Aitor Karanka, George Friend, Adam Clayton, Lukas Jutkiewicz. I'll ask you both, but start with you, Joe. What's your abiding memory of the Karanka years? What's your overriding memory or your favourite memory?
Oh, definitely when he got us promoted after the Brighton game. It's just one of those where you have to be in person to experience, you know, the joy of promotion. And obviously, he got us there. It took a while, but he got us there. But so I think us Borough fans will be forever grateful for Aitor for that. It's just when we're in the Premier League, it just didn't work out. It's just one of them things. But it's fair to say he's doing well so far, Birmingham, even though they're in like the mid-table pack at the minute. So it'd be great to see him again this coming Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, picking up on what Joe said there, David, he came at a difficult time at the club. He took over from Tony Mowbray, and granted, after a while, he was given funds to redevelop and change the squad completely. He was given a lot of money, but he delivered a promotion, which was 7 years we'd been waiting for, and he delivered that promotion, and things did turn a little bit sour. But even aside from the promotion, there was a lot of great days, great evenings following the Borough during his time at the club, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it helped that he had close contacts as well with Jose Mourinho, didn't at Chelsea at the time, because some of the loan players we got, it did take us up to that next level, which then could help push. But even when he took over from Mowbray, he brought the best out of players like Ledesma on the. When we were struggling to find goals and creation, he did come out and transform the club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously Birmingham at the weekend, and there has been. I know they had a couple of wins recently. They won away to Bristol City, which maybe stopped the rot a little bit for them, because some Birmingham fans were getting a little bit critical of the lack of goals and the lack of points that the side were getting. I think they've got 14 goals in 18 matches so far this season, but they've got another ex-Borough man up front who's always a danger man. We mentioned earlier on the show, Joe, Lukas Jutkiewicz. It won't be easy at St Andrews at the weekend, because it rarely is it?
Nah, we haven't had any luck at St Andrews these last couple of years or so. We've only managed the last win, I think, was only a couple of seasons prior to that. So it's because Birmingham are usually a tough nut to crack, I think, because obviously Jutkiewicz is their main go-to man in terms of up front, but they've also got Scott Hogan in there as well, so he can cause a threat for them as well. And obviously you got the ex-Borough lads, old Borough guards, so you got the likes of Friend and Clayton. They're doing well for them from what I've seen from them so far. So I think it'll be even tougher going to Birmingham than it is for the game coming up on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, the last 3 weeks now, it's almost been like Groundhog Day. It's been win one, lose one. We've had 3 points now from our 2 games over the last 3 weeks. Bearing in mind, you two lads are expecting us to get a win against Luton. Can we top the 3-point mark this week? Can we get something at Birmingham? Can we even get 3 months? Can we get a full house this week? What do you reckon, David?
I mean, it's got to be the aim, hasn't it? Why not beat them? They're very direct, aren't they? Which suits us, I think. When we do play teams who are direct, it sort of suits our setup. If you can get 4 points out of 6, like we've said, on the back-to-back games, it puts you on a good step forward.
Yeah. And Joe, it's a big one this week, because obviously there's a week break after the Birmingham game till Rotherham at home on Boxing Day. So I'm sure all sides will be the same, but you can go all out this week to try and get as much as you can from the games on Wednesday and Saturday, as it is in our case. And hopefully then you've got a week's break to prepare for Rotherham after that. So 2 crucial games this week, aren't there?
It definitely is. I would definitely like to see us take 6 points out of those games, but I think Birmingham might be the toughest one out of the lot, because they're very tough to break down. So I would much rather take the 6 points going into the Rotherham game and just concentrate past the Christmas period, and then going to Rotherham and Sheff Wednesday to just then 2020 on a high, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, Chris Andrews, I hope you're all right, mate. You had us to beat Luton 2-1 Wednesday, and you've got us to get a 1-0 win at St Andrews at the weekend, and I think we'd be all happy with that. But I hope, Chris, yours are famous last words here. Jutkiewicz wasn't much of a danger man here. I'd be careful what you say to that game on Saturday, because it's always a case, isn't it, David, that sometimes former players come back to haunt you, don't they?
Oh, especially at the Borough, we've had it over the years, haven't we? Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, Jutkiewicz, he's a handful, isn't he? Early on in the season, I was worried about how McNair would cope with the aerial threats of centre forwards in the Championship, but he hasn't looked uncomfortable at all. So, I think he's a match for Jutkiewicz.
Yeah, and before we wrap up the show tonight, Joe, a great point here from Steve Walker again about it'd be great if we can just stay in touch over the Christmas period, and then at the January window, maybe sign someone like Balassi and kick on up the league. And I know we ask it every week, we say it every week, but it is still there for the taking, isn't it? We're not a million miles away from the playoffs, and this season could still deliver something really memorable for Borough fans, couldn't it?
It could, yeah. I mean, like I said, we're just 4 points below the playoffs at the minute. So if we win those games coming up, we'll probably get to Christmas in the playoff places. So it's a long way till next May, but so it's one of those, you just got to go for it in this case.
Might have to make them hotel bookings soon, mate. Just get a provisional in there, Premier Inn down Wembley way. And friend of the show.
even the Hilton near Wembley, for example.
Yeah, you must have some cash, mate. Friend of the show, Tony Guest's been in touch. Hope you're well, Tony. What about that one, David? Play Roberts on Saturday against George Friend. He'll run him ragged. Do you think if he brought him in, he would be disciplined enough to like stay up against Friend, or do you think he'd be here, there, and everywhere? Patrick Roberts, and he's like, that's the problem to Warren, that he's not disciplined enough in what he does and what he offers.
Yeah, that's a problem. He likes to roam, doesn't he? I mean, he would really tear Friend apart, put it bluntly. Anyone with a bit of pace, and we've seen that over the years, George Friend struggles with. So he would, but just away from home, I can't see him playing Roberts because he's just not disciplined enough, especially against a direct team like Birmingham. You can't afford to play with 10 men and carry any passengers. So as much as I agree with, he would tear him, I can't see him starting. You know, I would have liked to see him start tomorrow, but I can't see how he can change a team after a dominant performance that we had midweek. He's got to go with the same 11 for me.
Do you think his days are numbered at the Borough now, lads? Do you think Patrick Roberts is going to be going back to Man City in January?
It depends, really. I mean, it just depends. Like, say if you got like either Tavernier or Watmore out, I mean, do you keep him and slot him back in? So it's just a matter of remains to be seen. If what worst case scenario, like the likes of Tavernier or anyone could get injured.
Yeah, I think Roberts will go, providing we bring other players in. If he doesn't bring other players in, then I think he'll keep him for the squad depth. But yeah, I think you won't see much of Roberts starting. He divides opinion with the Borough fans, doesn't he? So,
well, lads, we'll end it on that note. Thanks again for your contributions to the show. Borough fans, thanks as always for watching and getting in touch with us. Really enjoyed it tonight. David, Joe, great to see you again, lads. As always, everybody, keep up to date with all things Borough on Borough Fan TV during this week. Hopefully, as we've said earlier, we'll get more than 3 points this week, maybe a 4 or a 6 point a week. Until this week, from Hutchy here at Borough Fan TV and the lads, good night and up the Borough.
Good Borough.